to through. Yeah, it probably would have been good to have this in
Guatemala. Well, I had in Guatemala what I don't ever have here. What we're doing is a little bit like it, but in Guatemala there was several of us seriously dialoguing, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I got a lot of places to start. Let me just throw out like 3 topics. One was
as real as can be.
Well, we the last time we talked in this setting, we were going to talk about women and that kind of thing in terms of your life, and we never got there.
Yeah,
we got taken off on a relevant sidetrack, which is fine. The other issues I thought about, are recent events in your life, whether it's Guatemala and what happened there, which I don't have in terms of the life of the mind, and what the other part was kind of. I mean, I view your life in 2 parts. It's kind of pre-heart attack and post-heart attack, and what it's like to have a second life, what that's meant to you. And
well, let me push you for one or 2 more.
Okay.
In your own life, anything, from home to project neighbors to anything, or your office or something, are there any thoughtful questions or something? I don't even know how to pose the question, but if you wondered, not even wondered, wow.
Yeah, let me think just a second here. Last night we got a call from my parents, and their best friend's son just died. AIDS. Kind of. Their best friend didn't deal with their son being gay as well as my parents did. At least initially.
Is it the death or the AIDS? That's the question.
Well,
or gay.
I guess it's all 3 tied up together. I didn't think a lot about it because we played bridge last night, but I thought some about it. Just what's happened to a generation of young men. And it'll be happening to my brother.
Mm. Yeah, what does all that mean? Anything else? I don't know whether we touch anything. I just get a feel here, where we're at.
Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about you in the last couple of weeks. how do you change your life around?
I haven't answered that one at all.
No, but after your first heart attack, you did change your life around. I mean, surprisingly, for Patty and I guess, you took it seriously. You drastically changed how you ate and what you did and whatnot. And it's like yesterday. I went out and I bought the book and I started reading the book and I thought, this makes sense. I ought to do this.
On that book, I have a little problem. And that is, I would be more like you. You don't have the problem with Patty that I have with Loy. I know I have to change to eat. Loy knows I have to change to eat. But the kitchen is hers. I can't touch the kitchen. And I have time now. I mean, I will make time for anything. A very quick thing on we can go to the movie last night. We want to see this. We don't have to go tonight. I mean, there was a question: should we go or not go? I wasn't feeling well, but maybe a movie's a good thing. Anyhow. Everything now is different priorities. Time is the big difference right now. Take time. But what was your? I wanted to get. I got off the subject.
The kitchen.
The cooking. See, to get serious in that book already is more important than not as more important, but almost as important as the food you would cook and eat. It would require a different lifestyle, just to cook it.
Mm-hmm.
Which probably is better for the heart, as good for the heart as the food is.
Yeah.
You follow me a little bit? You don't have to take it seriously.
No, I absolutely follow you. The other experience I had this week was this meeting with Ed Senne and going over to see Roy Osmondson. And I come into work here and I sit down and I try to decide which of literally 100 things I ought to do this morning. What's the fire I have to put out next in order to keep my head above water? And I go at it and all of a sudden it's noon. And I decide whether I'm going to eat lunch or not today, given what I have to accomplish. And then it's 5:30, and I got to figure out when I can go home. Mm-hmm. And in between, I do my work. And Friday I had plenty to do, and I'd set this meeting, and with Ed Senne, and so at 3:15 I dashed out of here. Running 3 or 4 minutes late, and I called Ed just before I called him at 3:15 the time of our meeting. I said, I'm running a couple of minutes late. I'll be right there. I came into his office breathless from running up 3 flights of stairs or 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor. And I sat down, and then it was just very, he sets you at ease. Pace.
He's something else. Yeah.
The pace. I mean, a little bit to get to know me, and what kind of practice do I have, and the niceties. And it dawned on me, what a nice pace things happen at the university, and so we had a 45-minute meeting and we needed 10 minutes to get ready for Roy's meeting because we only had 2 items on the agenda. It was not a big deal. It was, and then we sit in with Roy, and Roy starts in for 15 minutes about what a blessing the new arts center is and how beautiful it is and how wonderful, and what it's going to mean to the, all this stuff. And it's, it's something he's excited about. And so he takes time in a meeting about something else to share this with us. It's all kind of friendly, and the pace was so nice. I mean, there's lots bad about some of that, maybe, about whether the art center is a good thing or a bad thing. But what struck me was just the same pace of that life and the time to reflect and that kind of thing. And
you got to be careful there.
I'm just saying, compared to what, and I'm one in my life, and I take time to reflect. I take time to read. I take time to do some of those things. But I look at the pace of life here in Valparaiso, and then I look at the pace of life in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And we go from the university to Valparaiso to Chicago in terms of.
Yeah, watch either or. Urban Studies would have its meeting once a week. It lasts all afternoon, and we might have decided one little thing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And argue like crazy and all over the map and everything else. Because of McAllister, Carleton, Colorado College, and Lake Forest and all those schools, we had rich, powerful kids in that program, which meant we had rich, powerful mommies and daddies who'd come visit them. And they would sit in one or here, two there on a staff meeting. And they did just like you did. They would do every time. Oh God, this is so wonderful, because they're sitting on board meetings in which they got 10 minutes to decide $57 million.
Yeah.
Look at the chart. Go. Vote yes. Vote.
It can be a waste of time.
I'm trying to say that the distinction is very real and very important. But you get into an administrative meeting in VU, and I got news for you. That's what you experienced.
Oh, I know that, and I'm not.
It's what you experience here.
I'm not either or, and I guess the real point of that is
they both have a role.
The flip side of my life is that, Thursdays we all go out to lunch together and take some time, and we have, it's a fairly, relatively speaking, sane pace here because we've chosen that. Mm-hmm. And the real point is, how do you choose? It's a healthy. I mean, we're talking about that book's talking about a healthy lifestyle. You're right. It takes time in the kitchen. It takes time to prepare this stuff, which is a saner kind of lifestyle. And how do you choose that for yourself?
The thing that we will be heading to someday is one of the things we'll be heading to. If we want our grandkids to make it, is that we daily, each one of us first have to invent a new lifestyle, and one that chooses a lower standard of living, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into any of that now. And of course, that's now on to impossible to do alone. You can't do it alone. Now, where do you find other people who would choose by choice a lower standard of living? And if you don't have, to me, that's church. If you don't have that one strong individual hang out a prayer.
And how do you?
You're not going to keep your kid out of being programmed to Little League and everything else by yourself. There's no way without wrecking them. I'm just using that.
Sure. No, I mean, and the decisions, the thing you said there that strikes me is that you have to choose it every day.
Because you can't make, the world is powerful.
You can't, and that's what, I know that. I know that I ought to be spending less. That's one way, consuming less.
It's hard.
But that only happens, you can't have a plan that, I'm going to do that. I'm going to save $1,000 by doing that. It's got to be
your being, not doing. The doing is not where it's at. It's the being.
I'm going to cook dinner tonight instead of go out to dinner. it's that kind of decision. We're going to turn the TV off and read together rather than watch TV together. Those kind of decisions that happen every day that make it, make a difference. It's not the big decision that says, I'm changing my lifestyle. You don't change your lifestyle.
No, but that's the perspective that you make each decision with.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I don't think we should get into, but the little thing yesterday on Project Neighbors and the board and so forth. That's cropped up for me a lot, and that goes to a very big picture thing for me.
On the government aid?
Yeah, it goes to a very big picture thing to me. And when I sat around our dining room table with Bob Springsteen, John Streetelmeyer, and Carl Lutze, and Loie and myself not too long ago, we talked about no interest loans, These are Christian guys, and it's amazing to me how their only answer to the thing is that I'm practically saying I'm nuts, just like that one pastor in Longbook Key did. And their answer to me is Walt, we're talking about good stewardship. No interest, translated, I'm saying this now, they didn't say quite like this. No interest loans, that's all well and good, but you invest your money, look how much good you can do with the results. You with me?
And you can answer them back in the same way. Yeah, look how much good you can do.
Yeah.
With a no interest loan.
Well, not quite. They will say, but with investment and the interest, we can help all sorts of folks. Okay? My only point right now, and that goes for the government grants and everything else, it's not an either or. They didn't ask me what the no interest loans are going for. They didn't ask me about the timing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Stay with me. They didn't ask me who it's going for. Who are they? Do they have names? What I'm trying to say is we're in a world today in which to be is to have things. Economics is the bottom line. It's sacred. That was not always the case. Backtrack just a little. I mentioned this, I think. Maybe mentioned this, I don't know. Up until 15th, 16th century, the whole world got their creaturehood from a god. There was not even a question. I don't care whether it was a Buddhist god, a Muslim god, or Christian god. That wasn't a question. The whole world that was accepted. You with me? Since the reformers, since this desacralizing of the cross and the crown and all that stuff, the bottom line now is dependent on man. And it's man that decides the good and bad, good and evil. Whole different ballpark. Now, in that ballpark, that's something we could get into very easily. But in that ballpark, just to state, don't get too far from this particular point on government grants and that other thing. The sacred today, since that time, is man, and man has decided that economics being is to have things, consumerism, production. Production's a sacred word for Democrats, Republicans, Muslims, or anybody. That's the bottom line. Standard of living. There isn't a country in the world that isn't dedicated by its leaders and its masses to a higher standard of living. Okay? Meaning consumption. What I'm leading up to say is that all decisions, all those little tiny decisions, come out of that new sacred. So that a Christian minister or dedicated pious layman like Springsteen and so forth, they will jump right up and say, that's not good stewardship. The bottom line for they're saying that has nothing to do with a person or people. It is, bottom line for their saying that is economics. Mm-hmm. It's the only ingredient that's going into their what is good stewardship in the church. You follow me a little what I'm saying?
Sure.
I'm not either-oring getting government grants and not getting government grants. What I'm fighting for is that we recognize the up and down side of making only economic choices. Put into the ingredients for the decision making something that questions efficiency and good bucks. Mm-hmm. And you know where all it goes with that.
Yeah. I was probably too harsh on you yesterday because I don't mind that kind of discussion.
I don't either, and don't worry about being harsh. I love it.
No. I mean, I don't mind having that kind of discussion. It was early in the morning. I was put off by the fact that for months you've been saying to me, George, there got to be some grants out there for this daycare center. I know there's money out there. There's lots of money out there. I've been told there's money out there. Let's go find it. The first time I walk in and say, there's some money out there and there's somebody who may be able to get it for us, you say, whoa back, we may not want that. And I say, Jesus Christ, because you and I have had this discussion before, and I know where you're coming from, and it just pissed me off.
Well,
but wait. But your point now is that, I can understand that. I know very well what the trade-off is because I've been through this grant thing with Monk and Gromer. Where
I just want our boards to sweat that decision.
And I understand that. And that's why I say I was probably too harsh. On the other hand, for me, it was just personal. It was like, oh man,
But
don't preach at me because I understand I understand what the trade-offs are, and I thought we'd made that decision.
But good people don't understand the trade-off.
Absolutely, no. I said I was, but you know me well enough now to know that I pop off. I say what I think and get over it.
Well, I wasn't unaware of that. I was not thinking of George. I was thinking of board and other people.
And that's all. That's right. I was thinking. We've talked about this. Where's this coming from?
And then there are grants, and then there are grants too. The Wheat Ridge grant is about as personal as you can get as far as an outside outfit.
Oh yeah, no, I understand that, and
that wouldn't have been gotten apart from Loy and Walt.
No, that was very personal. Mm-hmm. That came out of personal relationships, and
see, people think that this other 10,000 probably getting it from George Steinbrenner or somebody like that, or my brother. No, I don't touch my brother on George Steinbrenner. I don't even touch my brother on my brother.
Yeah,
he knows what I'm doing. My relationship means everything, and it has to come from him. He knows what I'm doing. He knows my needs. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to hit a friend of his whom I don't know from Adam. Yeah. I will take his money, but then that would be through a relationship. And it would have to be my brother dealing on his own and his own volition with a George Steinbrenner. I got a hunch I could put the squeeze on and get $80,000, period, from George Steinbrenner. I mean, brother's close with him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they go to everything together. But I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I really don't think in a board that I don't know. See, the moment you get into your office or the board hour covering a lot of things and reports, even our little handful of people board meeting, we don't have time to discuss these things.
Though certainly in the neighbors board, I think Patty was right yesterday. We could take the time to discuss those things. And I don't think it's bad to have us discuss the same thing we discussed at Hilltop, because we discuss it in a different way. There is some time to talk about these things at our board.
That would have to come from your leadership, probably, now that you know how I feel on these different things. The reason I'm saying this is our Project Neighbors board is not like Hilltop. Hilltop will have to be report here and report here. You can't keep these professionals sitting there all day, But here's a Project Neighbors board. Nobody's really questioned the fact that we don't have a treasurer's report. Nobody knows how much we got or don't have for anything else.
How long has it been since we had an election of officers?
Election of officers. We have a potential to discuss these things, but I don't want to be the one that brings it up. I think a Paul Schreiner would love it myself. I don't know. And there I would suggest maybe that if there's remotely that we discuss this a little bit more. It's a history of Project Neighbors. It really is. That you discuss it first with Paul Schreiner. It's just something that you would be interested in talking about. This is serious stuff, what I've been just describing. I'm talking about sitting with John Striedelmeyer, Bob Springsteen, Carl Lutze. They wiped me out. This is not good stewardship. Just think of it. Just think what you can do with that. It's a lot of money we're talking about if you invest and get interest.
Well, that's always been Hari's point, and
all the way.
And it's interesting though. I mean, people, we don't need to either or these other folks too. They're not all stupid. I mean, Roy Austinson in our meeting was saying, he and the board that voted on selling us this building are very excited about this project. And, he says this is very unusual because the board views its stewardship, almost that word, I think it was some word very much like that, very narrowly in terms of what they can and can't do.
Yeah,
and
strictly business.
But they're real excited about being able to do this because they see this as something different. And I think our offering them $80,000 gave them the excuse,
which we made up.
That's right. We made it up.
No idea how much it's worth.
I know, but it was like, can we do this? Yeah. What's a low figure? Yeah, this is fine. But it just gave them an excuse, and I think lots of people involved in the process know that it's just an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come back and say 85, 90, partly because of lobbying behind the scenes,
and partly because they were scared. Maybe we're serious that it's not going to be more than 80.
That's right, and. I mean, that's what I talk about, the lobbying behind the scenes. But partly it's because, okay, we know this is not market, but we've got this little report here that says it's okay, and why knock ourselves out? We want to do this.
We got to investigate. And I think maybe, if you don't mind, I want to see Phil on the architectural thing. If you don't mind, I think I might see if he might be interested to head a little university committee of folks. Make it up yourself, Phil. What and how the university can, not just on interns and lab people, how, they got kitchen stuff. They got how they can give us a hand.
Phil Gilbertson.
Mm-hmm. They're loaded with crap. We're going to need furniture. We're going to need carpets. We're going to need all kinds of shit.
Well, you don't have to clear anything with me.
Well, I know, but I will pass the word. But I think.
I think
I think that's what I'd like to do.
I appreciate knowing about it, but I think
Well,
you've been real sensitive about keeping Ed involved,
very much,
and Ron, and I think that's
but anyhow, this thing is a very crucial thing to me. Which we want to get into. I want to get into a lot more in time, socially, politically, in every which way. What this sacred means, the sacred of not money, the sacred of standard of living, economics, and consuming and production. I repeat, and then we'll get on, but I repeat, here's John Striedelmeyer, Bob Springsteen, Carl Lutz. Could not hear, and I tried hard, could not hear that. Let me just quickly throw this. In theology, we might have mentioned this before, the big debate is between new hermeneutics, the historical critical method, and the literalists, which South America's got billions of them today, Pentecostals. You wouldn't believe the place. Families divide over it in the churchy circle. Now, to me, it's not either or. To me, they both make a great contribution. The literalists, there's a contribution made. When something is said, something is said. I can take a beating from a lot of new hermeneutics people and a lot of certainly non-church people on my position on divorce, my position on homosexuals. I sound like a conservative, super right-winger, All I say is it's not God's will. I don't think it's God's will, and I can literally point to direct statements. It's not God's will that men sleep with men. It's not God's will that we get divorces. It's not God's will that we are prostitute. It's not God's will that we're kings. It's not God's will that we're transvestites or born as a paraplegic or blind from syphilis. On the other hand, we have a God that knows, first of all, we don't know what is God Almighty good and God Almighty evil. And we are people who are called human beings, people who in fear and trembling, that's a literal translation, are to serve our neighbor and to do good. Not having any answers to what that is. Which means this morning's paper had only one article in that 350 pages of Sunday paper that was worth reading. I'm going to follow it. I'm going to be very intrigued. It's something that the church, I've been saying it's the only thing the church has been required to do for about 1,500 years, and it hasn't done. And that is repent. Bob MacNamara, Secretary of Defense in the Vietnam years, in the rather bold headline on the front page, not the main headline, it's repenting. we were absolutely, totally wrong. I grieve over it. We made horrible mistakes. We were totally wrong, and he spells it out. And as a matter of fact, on the Diane Sawyer show, he broke down and cried. He says, I'm embarrassed. I'm very embarrassed about crying. That I've grieved on this too long. It's called repent, Stop and think for a moment. Had the MacNamaras had the silent majority, which is another word for church, mainstream church, had the mainstream church repented of slavery, repented of the stupid war in Vietnam, which, if you know anything about Marxism, you know it was not the way to fight communism, we wouldn't be arguing with Rush Limbaugh's whether Clinton's good or bad because he resisted the draft and a billion other incidences like that. You follow me? You'd be scared to almost, You with me? What I'm saying? But here's one man I'm going to be interested to see. It's going to be close. I got a hunch whether he gets clobbered or cheered. On ER the other night, you know what I'm talking about, ER? I doubt if you saw it. Did you see the doctor that time that lost the mother?
The black doctor?
No, the white doctor that he lost the mother. I mean, it was frantic, unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
But say the baby.
Yeah.
You didn't see that stuff?
Yeah, no, I did. I didn't see the whole show, but I
you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I saw enough of it in Patty's video.
He was called in front of the whole hospital staff on the last show. And they really, I guess they really tear a doctor apart within their own confines. And they, why did you do this? And they spell out medical terms. Well, I made a very serious mistake. I was wrong. I don't want to go into it, but it's going to be interesting on a mass media show to lower myself as saying that was a badge of courage and character, What percentage of the viewing audience would say, see, the son of a bitch and doctors, they make mistakes and they're not gods. I mean, that's a negative, And so anyhow, I don't want to spend time on MacNamara, but
well, I am, your response about homosexuals, transvestites, prostitutes, kings. I don't disagree with what you say. You say it's not God's will. Another way to translate that is it's apparently not the way that human beings are designed by whoever. We are designed to have heterosexual relationships.
We're not designed to get syphilis.
That's right.
And have blind babies.
Absolutely.
Or
yeah. And I understand that. Having said that, you also say, but we are here to love our neighbors, whatever that means. And
it used to mean killing homosexuals.
Right. And all I'm saying is that if you approach it that way and you say, yeah, this is, it may not be designed that way, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, and how do you deal with that? I think most often people in the church who respond and say homosexuality is not God's will, then take it a step further and say
kill him.
It is evil and needs to be rooted out.
That's literalism.
Look, hang on.
So that we stay with that.
It's evil. It needs to be rooted out. That person has to change. It doesn't accept the fact that though it's not designed, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you treat, and I don't, who knows whether homosexuality is innate or learned or whatever. Who knows about any of this stuff?
We're going to do, but go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that if you treat homosexuality like you treat AIDS, and I don't use AIDS because it's connected, but because there's nothing you can do about it once you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have it, what do you do? Syphilis is curable at this point, but any disease, disability, you lose a leg, if it's evil, does it mean you killed a person? Well, a weak person in the past who didn't have a leg may have been killed as a burden on the tribe or whatever.
Sure. Christians were right in there.
But there are other ways to relate to people.
Well, and so we don't have the answers. I don't want to lose the new hermeneutics literalists. Yeah, the literalists will take this case and God says, don't sleep with a man. Therefore it is evil. But see, now man becomes the judge of who's good and who's bad. And the new hermeneutics will take a little section and break down the language of the time, the feminism of the time, the something of the time, the da-da-da of the time, make great contributions. At that time, this was in order, the historical critical methods called.
Mm-hmm.
And it too will lose what we're just saying. The literalists absolutize that statement. In no case does that statement knock that statement. You with me? Stay with me if you can a little. God does say that, men are not made to sleep with men. Okay. Now, the new hermeneutics will explain it all away, and with some great contributions to our thinking. What I'm trying to get at here is the new hermeneutics is based on research and computers. Real quick words. New hermeneutics is based, it is the historical critical method, and the methodology is 100% research, which is 100% numbers, which is 100% computers, etc. Okay? When we talked about that board meeting that's got 58 seconds to decide $58 million, that's not decided on you and Roy and Ed sitting around talking. That's decided on who comes in with the graphs and the charts. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm getting at here is literalists we don't need. We don't need to absolutize it and throw it away. But we don't need that ideological position of killer homosexual, etc. Okay? That's gone. That is so out of date and obsolete it isn't even funny. Now the new hermeneutics, which makes new contributions to our thinking, at that time, that place, the problem is the whole world today, from that board that we're talking about, because that's what's running everything, the whole world today is, everything is decided by the historical critical method, R&D, research and development. Okay? Everything, including that round table with Striedelmeyer and so forth, deciding on efficiency and and greater yield, money and profit. Okay, you can do more with it. That's everything today.
Doing more meaning consuming more.
Economically, we're talking. That's a quick word.
Well,
I mean, it's economics now. It's our new Constantinism, being very corny. From Constantine on, the church, the John Striedelmeyers and the Bob Springsteens of the church said yes, stay with this one. And Carl Lutz's, from Constantine's time, the emperor now is, I'm making it so simple, it was a lot of rich women, a lot of this, and this all happens a little more gradually, but said, with a cross on the shield and banners, my best answer to that is if we had Michael Jordan come speak to our youth group, just think how we can reach out. Okay? That's called Constantinism. If we conquer the world with the legions and so forth, just think how we can, Columbus can do his thing and get the heathen into the fold. You with me? I'll probably make more sense if I go back just quickly on what I'm saying on new hermeneutics. The new hermeneutic theologians, which is almost all of the EU, for example, they have one problem. They're way ahead of the fundamentalists, okay? They're not like those Pentecostals, okay? They're okay with homosexuals, all right? No problem, for the most part. My problem with them is much deeper and bigger. Who is going to question the historical critical method if your tenure, your studies, your hard work, you're getting your doctoral degree, everything, your daily life is totally dependent on the historical critical method? Everything that you do is dependent. The means that your survival, the means of your survival, the means of your well-being is dependent upon this research and development. Who is going to question research and development? From what ground are you going to question research and development? That's the sacred today. For 1,600 years, we haven't questioned cable TV, TV evangelism, because since Constantinism, if it goes out to the whole world, just think of the numbers you can get. We don't question the means. The Springsteens, wonderful people, can't question the means that we're using. They didn't see for a moment, we're not even talking about anybody, not a soul that we know when we talk about investment. We don't even know who we're investing with and for. But the money can do wondrous things. The means are totally ignored. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Very crucial, man. I wish I could explain it better.
You are, though. I think that in terms of making a point, but I think that this Bob Springsteen's, and I don't know about him individually, but using that as an example, that they're not totally blind to this?
Well, you'd be surprised. Let's put it this way. They're not totally blind, but they don't want to hear a question. That's the nature of the sacred. I am sure a Japanese kamikaze budding pilot is not totally blind to, I wonder if dying for the sun god is quite where it's at, but that's a sacred. And the seduction that comes with dying for the emperor and the sun god is so powerful and not questioned anywhere. Everybody knows you're going to rise again.
I guess what I mean is that I don't want to satanize Springsteen and that or Spiritual Meyer
or I'm talking
Carl Lutzy in terms of their, they don't totally ignore the who. The investments for.
No, my point on using them is to emphasize the seduction of a sacred.
Yeah, and I think as long as we understand we're talking about a tendency that
I took the best people I know.
I understand. And all I'm saying is in taking the best people you know, what it says to me, and that's what we were talking about earlier. It's the seduction of the lifestyle. It's not that, whether you want to or not, in some senses, we give praise to the economic, the good stewardship.
We even say we don't, but we do.
That's right. We can serve it. We serve that end, whether we think we are or not, in many respects. And all I meant to do
more than we realize
is not to make it personal, is not to say we understand, they don't understand.
No, I'm not into that.
I'm just trying to clarify. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to clarify what I think I hear you saying. Though when it comes out at me, it sounds like I know, they don't know. They are blind. They can't see it. And I think the point is bigger than that. It's not that they can't see it.
No, I have to put myself totally into it myself.
I'm just talking about how we're talking.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Trying to be helpful.
That Walt and Bob and John
is that even though we understand the dangers of that, some of us, and even though large parts of society don't understand the dangers of it and praise it openly, we may be serving those ends. I think about my own life. How do I consume? Part of the choices that we're talking about is, I've probably told you about this book that, the little figure that he came up with, the hunter-gatherers spent about 12 hours a week recreating the means of their own existence. That is, working to gather their food and to make their shelter and their fires, which, shelter's pretty skimpy, fires not hard. And the leisure time was enormous. And now today we're working 60 hours a week, both
working much harder today.
Working much harder.
School kids are working more hard.
Consuming much more. It's that pace. And is that really a better life?
Should be questioned.
Is it really a better life? I think that the life of the mind, if that's a phrase that means anything to, I don't know if somebody, how it's used in other literature, what it refers to, but I'm just talking about intellectual life, or, the thoughts about, the same questions are asked now as were asked by Socrates and Plato and earlier. We haven't come a whole long way. We have different views and, different thoughts and whatnot, but not hugely different about what it means.
I
to
think
be
we're
human.
going backwards as far as the individual thinking is concerned.
Well, it may be. I'm just saying that when people sit down and talk about the things that make a difference, that really make a difference, these are things that made a difference 2,000 years ago.
When you talk about life of the mind, that's very important to me. When MacNamara, lying, he's embarrassed that he broke down and cried on the Diane Sawyer show. Because he's a life of the mind person. He's a thinker, okay? That's why he left the defense thing, and he found out later that Johnson got him the job to leave. But my point I'm trying to make is that life of the mind has a great contribution to make. You don't cry in public, you don't show your emotion in public. He's a traditional life of the mind person. The problem is today, emoting is where it's at. Process is where it's at. Imagery is where it's at. The mind is bullshit today. Timothy O'Leary, or whatever his name was, rightly said life of the mind as an absolute is bullshit. We have feelings, and that's why drugs were important and big. You have a body, this life of the mind that doesn't emote, that men are totally in charge of and control with, and so forth. I bother a little bit. Roy's pushing the Performing Arts Center because I know what he's doing. But life of the mind is about thinking, and but since then we've become a world in which the body is everything and the mind is nothing. Reflection is nothing. If there's any time that we need life of the mind, it's now, but it doesn't sell. It's not big. It's not important. What sells is emotion. I just wanted to throw that in there. What I'm really trying to say there, it makes a difference. What is sacred at the time, you know? The Crusades had nothing to do with economics, and yet your modern historians look at the Crusades from a modern day economic sacred, and say, well, King so and so is trying to make money off the Muslims or God knows what. I mean, that's where historical critical method's important. You go back to the time and look at it from their point of view. Okay?
Which was?
God was everything, no matter whether you're Muslim or Christian. God was everything. Today, he's nothing. He's not nothing, but he comes after man today. Man decides who's good and evil, who's a good Christian and who's not a good Christian. Man decides that.
Weren't they deciding that back in the Crusades?
That was the beginning. That's called consumerism and morality. That was the beginning of that, yes.
Of man judging.
But that, yes and no, not until the reformers. The sacred still was God. We're creatures of God. That was not questioned. No, beginning to come in with morality came in as creatures of God. What does he want, and so forth and so forth. Now, man is in and out of. God is not an automatic anywhere. That there was nobody that wasn't a creature of God in those times. But I want to get to the reformers on this. The reformers destroyed that sacred. And things are what they are. Things are things. Objects are objects. An emperor is an emperor, not God's chief representative on earth, and so forth. And with that came democracies, republics, voting, the bourgeois spirit, capitalism, the will to power. That's the bad part that came with it. A lot of good came with it too. We desacralized nation states and emperors. That was good. We disorganized a world that needed disorganization. Biggest good that came with it is awareness of the individual. Prior to the reformers, with God, everything, and man, nothing. I mean, you look at all our little teaching books for children and everything. The great white father, the bearded God with a carrot and a stick, and God knows what. I mean, you're scared shitless. I mean, everything was determined by that. Now we're in a world in which Jesus is your brother across from the breakfast table. Not very, you don't need the cross anymore. I'm throwing that in because that's a big article of the day. Jesus is your brother. So the reformers desacralized, and with that came a lot of new goods and a lot of new bads. There's so much to talk about on that, but I repeat, one of the bads, capitalism, and so forth. With that came a new sacred.
You don't think capitalism was a step forward from what was there before?
No.
You're not a Marxist in that sense.
No.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, Marx was, I'm just curious, something that's, it's in terms of the economic development. And he didn't say capitalism was evil, better than feudalism.
No, he has a stream of history.
Yeah.
And capitalism is a stage.
Is a quote unquote natural stage.
I want to discuss that real soon. Real soon. And in terms of the development of the proletariat, it is a very important stage, which hasn't totally gone away. But that's something we can save a little bit. We got off on a lot of stuff. When I went to Guatemala, the refined points, just like I'm always in this, but in Guatemala we had time.
Mm-hmm.
The question was, what would a semester program, a good one, really look like? They tried one without, quote me for a moment. I'm not trying to be arrogant here. But I've worked 40 years. All my work has been with young people in unsettling environments all my life. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned a little something from them and so from the experience. And I saw what was going on in Guatemala was stupid. And it was failing too. So now the next question is, I did something I was scared to death of. Is I felt I could go in with how-tos, but that goes back to the doing and being again. Unless they understood what I'm talking about. I didn't want to do a how-to because I don't, I can suggest a how-to. It's the same thing on grants. I don't want to say to get grants or not to get grants. If the board understood what our problem is, it could be some new creative thoughts here, So what I wanted down there was to finish up with, what would this look like in real day-to-day terms? But I didn't want to start there. I'm long-winded here saying nothing, but do you follow me?
No, I'm following.
So I tried to get on the table all the kind of stuff that we're talking about, only lots and lots and lots. And basically they enjoy it. I mean, it was very, very rewarding for me, and I think for them too.
Who were you talking with?
Talking with I'm trying to think of what kind of doctor you call this, dealing with gonads and stuff, and urinary and urologist, PhD, and dealing with Bill Buckley's nephew, the Bill Buckley, who is an educator. I was dealing with 3 other folks, a 30-year Peace Corps person that's been down there 30 years, very wise. Actually, he's a builder. Dealing with a restaurant owner. American, all Americans.
Are these separate, or are they
together?
Together in terms of this.
Mostly.
There is a program. There's a semester program for kids now, or there.
Well, there was a try run, and we're trying to develop one. I don't want to get into that too much. I really don't. I have on this one page here, days of conversation, like you take note. Because one of the theses for me was that we've got to get out of specialization. And that folks coming from graduate school already specialists, and they've got to somehow, I don't know if it's possible, because they basically don't want it, what I'm saying, and certainly institutions don't want it. They have to see the big picture. Patty understood, but see, Patty's a rare bird. Patty's public health. She knows that public health that ignores the criminal justice system, ignores ethnicity, ignores politics, on and on, transportation, etc., is bullshit. Problem, when you're in school, graduate school and postgraduate, you ignore all those things. You become more and more of a specialist. Mm-hmm. If you're into cardiovascular stuff, you get more and more into the heart. Farther and farther away from the criminal justice system. You with me? A little bit what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. And so the name of the game is not how to have a winning program here that sells, but how to have a program that is needed badly. That means, is it possible to slow people down? Is it possible to help them raise questions that they would not have otherwise raised? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot to talk about on just that, you know. And I don't know how successful I was. I will find that out. But we got into so much. We got in, you know, how can you have, I don't care whether you're Tulane or VU, how can you have a program on public health and not know the role of the church, whether you're Christian or not? You with me? Now, there's no public health program, graduate program that deals with the church as an institution. You with me, Lou?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
How can you study, I'm just picking something. How can you study public health in particularly in third world countries, but even first world countries, and not know the role of the church?
Mm-hmm.
You're not into public health, unless you do. That's just one little piece. You with me?
Yeah. Let me just throw something in here. You know, because I started reading this Ornish book.
Mm-hmm.
He's in some senses, he's a cardiologist.
I haven't read it yet.
Well, it's interesting in this respect because it goes against this trend of specialization.
Mm-hmm.
Though there's a lot of specialized knowledge there. And it's based on research and development and long 20-year studies about what works and doesn't work with hearts and all that stuff. But in some senses, the specialist narrows down on the heart. And what can you do when there's a blockage there to unblock it? Well, you put in a new vein, you put a balloon in there and blow it up and all that stuff. And what his book is, in some senses, is approaching heart disease problem from a global perspective. That is, how do you change the root causes? And he talks about, and I haven't read the whole thing, I just read some of the introduction, but he says, look, this book will help you lose weight. The reason I wrote this book is because I was treating people for heart stuff, studying this stuff. And we found out that when we put them on this diet, they ate more and they lost weight. And it was not just a diet, because diets don't work. People go up and down and you deprive yourself and whatnot. This is changing your lifestyle. And he's evidently got some spiritual stuff in there in terms of, his views and what he thinks. But it's put together in a way, it's a view of his. And I'm not saying this is all holy. I'm just saying it's against the trend of saying, he's saying, taking the pills to lower the cholesterol is not the way you're going to have a healthy heart. If you want to have a healthy heart, then you've got to change a lot of things. And it's all connected. And I just because we're talking about
see, my as a person who had a heart attack, my perspective is he's absolutely right, but thank God for the pills.
Oh, and he's not all he's saying is
he can say that because he is a specialist.
He's saying, look, the bypass surgery in X percent of cases without more clog up again within 5 years. And the angioplasty in X percent of cases clog up in 4 months.
He's what I'm talking about. He, knowing more and more about unblocking the block and in the specialization, that's not life of the mind. Okay, that's R&D.
Absolutely. But wait.
No, stay with me. Life of the mind is to do the thinking he's been thinking.
That's right.
That's life of the mind. Now, excuse me, but our society makes life of the mind his study of specialization. That's our society. Oh, he's an intellectual. He's into this. He's not thinking at all. He's not raising any questions at all.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that was my only point. Is if and when you read that book, I think it might be an example of going against the grain. It's thinking the bigger picture and trying to say to people, there's not a medical solution to your problem of heart disease. It's a life solution. He's had examples where hearts cure themselves. They create their own bypasses. As Rick has this, 3 feet of blocked vein in his leg. And he says what's happening is that, doctors say, is that other veins get bigger, take over. They don't need it. And so,
in terms of your earlier question on AIDS, dying, homosexual, including me on my heart attack and so forth, if you were to take the same thing you just said, only get off the heart, and it's a question of being. It's not what am I going to do with my day thing and so forth, and is there occupational therapy over here? Do I have a counselor over here, nursing home over here, and this and this and this and this? It's not unimportant, but that isn't the real question. It's a question of being. And I'm just exaggerating what you said about him on heart. Mm-hmm. And no, we're all going to die. So I'm always more concerned about the person on the board than the results of the board meeting. I flipped Dick Bepler out once, so we got to wind down, but he didn't want Dick Lukey on the staff at Christ College. Dick Lukey is a brilliant theologian in Chicago, but an urban man. He raised too many questions, okay? And he was a guest lecturer here, and there was a chance to get him. Due to circumstances beyond Dick Bepler's control, I was one of 3 and only 3 people on I was on Christ College staff, even though I didn't belong, because of urban studies, okay, and seniority. I was one of the only 3 people that could vote on Dick Lukey coming or not coming. Mm-hmm. And so the only way Bepler, the only way Bepler could handle it is to finish urban studies, separated it out of Christ College. It doesn't belong here. It's experiential, and he started putting it down, even though we had no problem with him before. Mm-hmm. So a year-long campaign. The whole goal of it is to not allow me to vote on tenure and people coming here. And he was destroying every way he could. He restricted the number. We go from 32 to 6 that we are allowed to bring in and so forth. Everything he could to destroy urban studies and me. Put me down, everything else. And one day I said, Dick, on this voting thing, I just want to be heard. I don't care if my vote's counted or not. I want to be heard. God, it flipped him out. Will you put that in writing? I actually put it in writing that the Christ College staff would hear my point of view before they'd make a decision and I would give up my voting rights. I had to do something to balance out what he's doing for urban studies, And so that actually happened. I mean, I got more stories than you could. But what I'm trying to say there is what it means to me for a person to be a person. Hear me. Then throw it away if you want, but hear me. And that goes for others. And whether we get grants or not get grants, fool with the government or not fool with the government, I just want people to think what they're doing. Now, getting from
that's a way of living, a way of being, a way of thinking in the world.
Yeah.
And it's something that, it's so easy for us to we've got an hour to make the decisions. Why are we talking about this again? And yet it's important to take the time because there are different people there. It's often important to take the time to do that. And
now, no board of any corporation would take that time.
No, there are givens in this world. After all, it's run by economics.
That's the bottom line.
We have these common assumptions amongst ourselves.
I want to deal with the word sacred a lot more.
Either explicit or implicit.
When the word sacred is very important to me. I'm sure when the sacred was nature, it was nature at one time in primitive society. I'm sure there were folks that every now and then raised a few questions in their own heads a little bit, is that cow really sacred?
Or can't I eat it because I'm hungry? Yeah.
But it didn't last long. Before I forget, I've said this so many times, but and everything was said, they made me mix. I come into that Aztec community, all right? I'm going back now a couple of thousand years. It's very real to me after being in Mayan. I come into that Aztec community, that unbelievable civilized world. Unbelievable. Major contributions to civilization. And I'm from the outside. And I just come in quietly. And this beautiful girl, I start dating her. Going with her. And I see the sacred in ways that they couldn't possibly see. Because when something's sacred, it is the order. There's no questions about a sacred. It's the order. Okay? Nobody questioned, is there a God or not a God before the reformers? Nobody questioned that. That's the order. We don't understand that today because man is the order. And so I come in and I see them on a special festival day taking 10 VIP hearts out live and putting them on the altar and jumping so that the next year's corn crop will really be abundant. Okay? I'm serious. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I know from my experience that they ain't gonna have shit to do with whether the corn grows or not. Okay? Now what I do? We're talking about something that's the order of everything in life. And I know that it's not easy to say to anybody. So here's my girlfriend. We're getting pretty close. And I finally one day say to her, you don't really have to do this to get that to happen. I'm keenly enough aware that I'm taking a hell of a chance. But it's got to be done by somebody someday. Doing nothing is not the answer. And now, I didn't know what she's going to do with her father. Is she going to tell her father this? And if she did, that might be the end of me in 2 seconds. I might be one of those jumping hearts real fast. It's very dangerous to go against the sacred. Martin Luther went against the sacred. He survived. John Huss said exactly what Luther said 100 years earlier and was burned at the stake. A lot of people said what Lech Walesa said. You never heard of him. For some reason, when Lech Walesa stood up in the shipyard and said bullshit, and he didn't know that 5,000 were going to suddenly jump up and say bullshit too, and solidarity was formed, and he survived.
Mm-hmm.
Had they not stood up, you never would have heard of Lech Walesa. I guess I'm trying to make that point on when you fool with the sacred, and today that's standard of living, production, consumerism.
You're nuts.
You're nuts.
You're marginalized. I mean, how have they? I mean, in some senses, if your job is to question the sacred, then
see, my good friends from Bob Zimmer and Longboat Key will be nice and say, "Walt, you're just such a rare person." Or my good friends from the Carls and everything else will, yeah, but look at all the good you can do here, but in essence, they're all saying you're nuts. That sacred is powerful, is what I'm saying.
And they're saying as well, I don't understand how you can do that.
And
I can't do that. How can you do that?
Yeah. And that solves the problem for them. Just don't hang around me. Well, I mean, that's the same for mission. In the 19th century, we sent missionaries all over the world, and churches had no problem having mission Sunday, mission Sunday, mission Sunday, mission Sunday. Just like the TV evangelists now, we're building Pentecostal things all over the world. But by God, don't let them live next door to me. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll keep plodding on. This is going to take forever, George.
Well, it's.
It doesn't bother me at all. I think it has to be that way. So.
Well, it's something. Things happen, things develop, and it's. I asked the question because I'm interested. The larger question that we started with, and I told you I didn't know where it's going. But it seems to me that it's going somewhere, and it's not like I can sit down and say, okay, what are the facts? Let's do the biography or whatever. It's.
I got it all here, and I can't do it. I just can't do it.
Well, it's also so I don't know, but it's worth my time.
Okay, you know when we're going to meet yet for this contract thing?
No, Patty said.
Doesn't have to firm yet. I just want to gradually focus on.
Yeah, she said she doesn't have any late nights. I'd prefer to do it like I think Wednesday.
Okay, well, tentatively gear for Wednesday.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is. I'm just beginning to pick up on this sacred stuff. You've used the word, but
it's very important to me.
It's beginning to have some meaning to me.
Very important. I don't want to lose the fact that it gives order, and man has to have order. He has to. I just say this in closing, that every time a sacred is desacralized, okay, the gods of nature were desacralized. The sacred cows don't hold for anybody anymore, okay, including in India. Every time the gods of nature are desacralized, or any of the new sacreds, it is immediately re-sacralized. Not it, but there is a new sacred.
And you both gain and lose.
Oh, it's we got to talk about that, but it's very interesting that it's freedom and liberation to be out from under of the gods of the sun, of nature. It's freedom and liberation to be out from the God Almighty Emperor. That's liberate the cross and the crown. That's liberation. That's freedom, and it's freedom to be out from under the Judeo law. That's freedom. That's liberation. But we immediately invent a new sacred. That gives us the order. The new world order today is global. That is a new world order. That is the new sacred. And I don't care whether you're in Palestine or Israel. It's no different than in Valparaiso, the new world order. It has to do with consumerism, production, and efficiency. It's the new world order.
Well, I guess what's interesting is the way in which, whether it's a religious sacred or an economic sacred or whatnot, the way in which it gets built into people's presumptions so that it's never thought about.
Exactly
or if it's thought about, it's never.
About.
It's never. Well, it may be thought about.
I'm exaggerating.
People are not blind, but it's not. It's very difficult to seriously question it, and it is so integral that to change it. I mean, to change it even in your own life, as you started out with, is that you can't do it alone, and it's a decision that it's something that you have to decide 100 times each day. Or 1,000 times each day. Are you? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's in how you are in this world. It's built into how people live in the world. We're built to consume in this society.
See, I'm not sure how much anybody thinks about sacred. I'm sure there's some thoughts, but not much. It's by definition, it's something that's not questioned. I'm not talking about the religions that come under the sacred.
No, I understand.
Now, you do question the sacred cow, but that's a religion under the sacred of nature. You with me?
But
nobody questioned nature.
No, I understand, and I understand exactly.